The mule came back without him. That was the first thing. Then, 3 days later, he came back too, and that was worse. Elias Croft had been watching the tree line since morning, not for any particular reason, just the habit of a man who'd spent 15 years in the Ozark hill country, where the trees had a way of offering things before you went looking. A deer at dusk, a storm front building slow behind the ridge, the particular silence that meant something larger than you was nearby. The mule had shown up on a Tuesday, just walked into the yard like it had been gone an hour instead of 6 weeks. No pack, no rope trailing. The animal's coat was roughed up along both flanks, like it had pushed through heavy brush in a hurry, but its hooves were in decent shape, and there was no blood on it. No wound, just gone, and then back. Elias had taken the mule in, rubbed it down, given it water and grain. He didn't make much of it at first. Animals came and went strange sometimes, but there was no halter on it, no trailing end of a cut rope, no tether, nothing. Someone had taken the tack off, deliberately, and let the animal go. He stood in the paddock for a while after that, looking at the mule, thinking about what kind of person removes a mule's halter in the middle of the hill country in February, and then sends the animal home alone. He didn't come up with a good answer. His neighbor Harlan Pease stopped by that same afternoon, saw the mule in the yard, and went quiet. "That's Abe Trotter's mule," Harlan said. Elias knew that. Abe's been gone since February. Elias knew that too. Abe Trotter had headed north and east into the deeper hill country in early February, same as he did most winters. Trapping season. He worked the creek draws up past Goat Rock, where the beaver runs were still good. He always went alone. He always came back alone. He was 6 weeks overdue. "The mule looks fine," Harlan said after a moment. "Too fine," Elias said. Harlan looked at him. 6 weeks in February country, Elias said. "Coat should be worse than that." Neither of them said the rest of it. The second thing happened on a Friday. Elias was splitting wood behind the cabin when he heard the gate latch. He turned around, and there was Abe Trotter walking up the yard. He was alive, moving on his own feet, upright, no visible injury. He was dressed in his trapping clothes, the heavy canvas coat, the wool pants, boots, and he was carrying his pack, which sat high and full on his back. Elias put down the axe and walked toward him. "Abe," he said. Abe Trotter looked at him. That was when Elias noticed the first wrong thing. The look on Abe's face was not the look of a man coming home after 6 weeks in the cold. It wasn't relief or exhaustion or the particular tiredness that trappers wore when a season had gone well. It was the look of a man trying to remember something he knew he should know. "Abe," Elias kept his voice level. "You all right?" Abe opened his mouth. Then he closed it. He tried again. A sound came out, rough and low, like a voice that had not been used in a long time. Not words, just the shape of an attempt, the shape of something that used to be words. Elias took him inside. He sat Abe down at the table and put coffee on. He moved slow and deliberate, the way you'd move around a spooked horse, no sudden gestures, no raised voice. Abe sat where he was put. He looked around the inside of the cabin carefully, the way you'd read a page of something familiar that had been translated wrong. The pack was still on his back. "Let me take that," Elias said. He reached for the pack straps. Abe flinched, one quick, instinctive movement, and his hand came up. Not aggressive, just a reflex. His fingers closed around the strap for a second. Then he let go. Elias set the pack down beside the table. It was heavier than it should have been. Much heavier. He poured 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of Abe, who picked it up with both hands and drank without looking at it. When the cup was empty, he set it down and looked at Elias. "You want more?" The mouth moved. The eyes said yes. Elias poured again. He sat down. Outside, the afternoon was going gray, clouds thickening from the northwest. The birds had gone quiet in that particular way they had before weather moved in. "Abe," he said, "can you tell me what happened?" Abe looked at him. Then he looked at his hands, turned them over, palms up, and studied them like they belonged to someone else. His fingers were intact. No frostbite damage. No missing tips. He'd been in the deep hills through February and March, and his hands were fine, but there was something under his fingernails. Dark, packed in tight. Not mud, the color was wrong for mud. Darker, more uniform. Elias noticed it and looked away. "Did something happen up at Goat Rock?" he said. At those words, Goat Rock, something moved across Abe's face. Fast, like a cloud shadow crossing a field. Gone before Elias could read it. But it had been there. Harlan came by the next morning. He stood in the doorway of the cabin, looking at Abe at the table, and he was quiet for a long time. "Can he walk?" "He walked here from wherever he was," Elias said. "Walked fine." "Can he talk?" "Not yet." Harlan came inside and sat down across from Abe. He leaned forward. "Abe, it's Harlan." Abe looked at him, that careful working look. "You're home now. You're safe." Abe looked down. "Did something happen up in the hills?" "Nothing." "Did you see someone up there?" Abe's hand tightened around the spoon. Not a flinch. Something slower, or something deliberate, like a man stopping himself. Harlan looked at Elias. Elias looked at the pack still on the floor. "Abe," Harlan said quietly, "what's in the pack?" Abe did not look at the pack. They waited until evening. Not for any particular reason, just that neither of them wanted to do it, while Abe was sitting right there, watching. There was something about his relationship to that pack that made Elias careful. The flinch when he'd first reached for it. The way Abe's eyes tracked to it occasionally, and then tracked away. Like a man keeping tabs on something he didn't want to look at directly. When Abe finally fell asleep in the chair. Fast and deep, like something had been switched off, Elias picked up the pack and carried it to the other end of the cabin. Harlan stood close. The buckles were stiff. The leather was swollen from wet, like the pack had been submerged at some point and dried hard. It took Elias a minute to work the first strap loose. He opened the top flap. Pelts. A good number of them, rolled tight. Beaver, mostly, a few mink, all well prepared. Whatever had happened to Abe out there, he'd kept trapping. But that didn't account for the weight. Elias reached in past the pelts. His hand found something else. He pulled it out, a leather pouch cinched with a drawstring about the size of a man's fist. He untied the cord and opened it and held it under the lamp. He didn't say anything for a moment. It wasn't coin. It wasn't dust. It wasn't anything he had a clean word for right away. Small pieces, irregular, some flat, some rounded, some no larger than a thumbnail. Dense, heavy for their size. The color was right, but the feel of it was wrong somehow, the way the light caught it. Like metal that had been somewhere very dark for a very long time and had taken on some quality of that darkness. He spread the pieces across the table. Some of them looked shaped, not broken off a rock face, not tumbled out of a creek bed. More like they'd been handled, worked, like someone had held each one and decided something about it. "That's gold," Harlan said. "It's something," Elias said. He picked up the largest piece, about the size of his thumbnail, roughly disc-shaped. On one face of it, barely visible under the lamp, there was a mark. Not words, not numbers. A design pressed or scratched into the surface. A circle with lines through it, or something close to that. He turned it over. The back was smooth. He set it down. "Where in God's name did he get this?" Harlan said. Elias looked across the cabin at Abe, asleep in the chair. "That's the question," he said. But he was still looking at the mark. At the fact that whatever this was, it had been put there on purpose. By someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who had been here before. Elias slept poorly that night. He lay on his bunk listening to the sound of Abe breathing. Around midnight, he heard the chair creak. He heard Abe cross to the window. He heard the particular silence of a person standing still for a long time. He didn't get up to look. After a while, the footsteps moved back. The chair creaked, then nothing. In the morning, the chair was empty. The blanket was folded and left on the seat. Elias stood looking at the folded blanket. Abe was outside in the yard, looking north. Elias went out and stood beside him. The air was cold and damp. The hills to the north and east deep green and indistinct in the morning mist. He said nothing. He just stood beside Abe and looked at the same hills. After a long moment, Abe's chin dropped slightly, like his head had gotten heavier. "You want to go back," Elias said. Not a question. Abe didn't look at him. "I'm not going to stop you," Elias said, "but I'd like to understand what happened up there first." A pause. "Were you alone the whole time?" The chin dropped again. "Someone was with you." Something changed in Abe's posture. Not confirmation, not denial. Something between them. Something complicated. "Did they hurt you?" Abe turned and looked at him fully. The searching expression again, but this time underneath it. Something else. Something that looked almost like the effort to correct him. Like Elias had said something wrong, and Abe was working very hard to explain why. His mouth opened. He tried. He failed. He looked back at the hills. Harlan brought his wife Cora the next afternoon. Cora Pease had done some nursing in her younger years. She sat down across from Abe without any of the careful maneuvering the men had been using. "You been eating?" she said. She studied his face, his hands, leaned in and looked at his eyes. Then she ran her hands over his scalp, his temples. When she pressed at the base of his skull on the left side, his shoulders tightened. "There," she said. "Tender?" Something like confirmation in his eyes. She leaned back. "He took a blow," she told Harlan. "Or a fall. Something hard." She paused. "The speech can go like that. I've seen it before. A man in Missouri got his head stove in by a horse kick. Didn't talk for 8 months. Then, one morning, he asked his wife to pass the salt. But that didn't explain the rest of it. The way he looked at things, like he was seeing them for the second time." "Did he come back all the way?" Harlan asked. "Most of the way," she said. She looked at Abe. "You understand what I'm telling you?" The softening around his eyes. "Good," she said. "Then here's what else I'm telling you. Whatever happened out there, it isn't in here with you. You're safe. You can take your time." She paused. "But if you can help us understand, it would be worth trying." Abe looked at the table. Then his right hand moved. Slowly, deliberately, he extended one finger and touched the surface. He drew a line, then another, crossing it, then a curve, then a mark at the end made twice, pressing harder the second time. An X. Cora leaned in. A place? Abe's eyes came up. Elias, Cora said without looking at him. He's showing you a place. That evening, alone in the cabin, Elias spread the pieces out on the table again. He looked at them for a long time. It still bothered him. Not the quantity, though the quantity was wrong enough on its own. It was the quality of the pieces. The way they sat on the table. He'd handled gold before, dust, flake, the occasional worn coin, and it had always felt found. Random. The particular chaos of something that had formed slowly in the dark and been broken loose by accident. This didn't feel like that. This felt like it had come from somewhere specific, like it had been kept somewhere. He picked up the disc-shaped piece again, the one with the mark. He held it under the lamp for a long time, turning it. The mark was deliberate. He was sure of that now. The circle, the lines through it, whatever it meant, someone had put it there for a reason. Had pressed it in while the metal was soft, or scratched it in after. Had decided this piece was worth marking. He wrapped everything back in the pouch and set it on the shelf above the fireplace. Then he sat in the dark for a while, listening to the night outside. Quiet. Too quiet for this time of year, when the spring frogs should have been loud in the low ground. He went to bed. He lay awake for a long time. On the fourth day, Abe spoke. He was standing at the window again, looking north when it happened. It came quietly, no effort, no struggle. 2 syllables, clear. A name, not a word Elias knew. Not a common name, not anything he could attach to a person he'd met. Just a name. Said the way you'd say a name you'd been told directly. The way you said the name of someone who had looked you in the face. Elias crossed the room. Say that again. Abe turned. His expression was different now. Not searching, but emptied out. The particular look of a man who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has finally set it down. He said the name again. Same weight, same certainty. Who is that? Elias said. Abe looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked back at the hills. Harlan turned it over when Elias told him. French, he said after a moment. Could be a French name. There were French trappers through these hills, long before our time. You know it. I don't, Harlan said. But Edmund Sev might. Edmund Sev was very old, and he lived alone about 7 miles back in the hills. He was known to have a longer memory than anyone else in the county, not just his own, but the kind of memory that gets handed down through families and country where writing things down was never the habit. They found him on his porch shelling beans. When Harlan said the name, Edmund Sev stopped. He set the bucket down carefully. He looked at them both. Where'd you hear that? He said. A trapper just came back from up past Goat Rock, Harlan said. Came back wrong. That was the first word he got back. Edmund was quiet. Not the quiet of someone thinking. The quiet of someone deciding. My father, he said finally, used to mention someone. He paused. Didn't go into it much. He picked up the bucket again. Didn't resume shelling. Just held it. A man who worked the deep hills, he said. Before most of the settling. Hunter. Digger. Another pause. My father said he found something. What kind of something? Elias said. Edmund looked at the hills. Nobody agreed on that, he said. But the man had money when no one knew where it came from, and he kept going back, season after season, farther than most men went. He stopped. Then one winter he didn't come back. He died, Harlan said. Edmund was quiet for a moment. That was one story, he said. A crow called somewhere in the trees. The sound came and went. My father said some men went looking, Edmund continued. Some came back strange. Some didn't come back. He glanced at them. After a while, people stopped going. What did your father think was up there? Elias asked. Edmund set the bucket down on the porch boards. He thought someone was living there, he said. Not a ghost. Not a story. Someone real, who'd been there long enough to be part of the place. A pause. Someone who didn't want finding, but who found people he thought were worth finding. Worth finding how? Elias said. Edmund looked at him directly. Worth teaching, he said. Then he stood up and went inside. The door closed. Elias and Harlan sat on the steps for a moment in the silence he'd left behind. They rode back mostly without talking. Elias turned it over in his mind. The name, the teaching, the way Edmund had said worth finding, like it was a thing that happened, or had happened, and was still the kind of thing that could happen. He thought about the mark on the gold piece, the deliberate circle and lines, not decoration, not accident, a signature, or something like one. He thought about the shape of the pieces themselves, handled, decided about. He thought about Abe at the window, saying the name with certainty, not like a thing he'd heard, like a thing he'd been told. When they got back, the cabin door was ajar. Elias pulled up his horse. He had closed that door. He was certain of it. He got down slowly, walked to the porch, pushed the door open and looked inside. Nothing disturbed, nothing knocked over. The pack still on the floor, the lamp still on the table, but the shelf above the fireplace was empty. The pouch was gone. Harlan came up behind him. Someone came in here. Yes. While we were gone. Yes. Elias crossed the room. He stood in front of the empty shelf. The impression of the pouch's base was still in the dust. Nothing else disturbed. No ash scattered from the hearth. No chair moved. Whoever had come in had walked straight to the shelf and taken the one thing. Then, beside the impression, a mark in the dust. One line drawn with a single finger, an inch long, placed carefully, precisely, just one line. Harlan leaned in. What is that? Elias said nothing. He was thinking about the mark on the gold piece, the marks on the limestone walls of the valley he hadn't seen yet. The same family of shapes, the same kind of mind behind all of them. Someone had been in his cabin, and they hadn't come looking. They had come knowing, had known exactly what was here, had taken only what was theirs, and had left something. Someone's making sure we understand, he said. Understand what? Elias looked at the line in the dust. That they were here, he said. That they chose to be. Abe was gone the next morning, not his things. The pack was still on the floor, his coat still on the hook, just Abe. Elias found tracks at the edge of the woods. Boot prints heading north and east, toward Goat Rock, toward the deep country. Steady. Even. No stumbling, no hesitation. Just a man walking. Elias stood looking at the tracks for a long time. He went inside. He sat at the table. He thought about the settled expression on Abe's face the morning before he left. The emptied, resolved look. The folded blanket left on the chair. Small and careful, that gesture. For no one's benefit but his own, or whoever's habits those were now. He told Harlan he was going to follow. Harlan said he was coming. They found the stone markers at midday. Flat pieces of limestone stacked in columns beside the creek. 3 stones, balanced, placed with intention. Not something water did. Not something wind did. The first marker, then a second, half a mile on, then a third. The trail led them higher, into a narrow valley pressed between two steep ridges. The creek ran in a shallow channel cut through solid limestone, the stone pale gray and worn smooth. The walls of the valley rose 40 or 50 feet on both sides. The light was thin in here, the sun not clearing the south ridge until late. "Someone's been here a long time," Harlan said quietly. The limestone walls were marked, not carved deeply. Scratches, lines made with something hard. Some of them recent, the pale stone still bright where the surface had been breached. Others weathered in, soft at the edges. Old, the same shapes recurring, lines and angles, a circle with lines through it, the same mark as the gold piece, the same mark as the line in the dust on his shelf. Elias rode slowly through the valley without speaking. At the far end, where the walls narrowed and the creek disappeared underground into a slot in the limestone floor, Abe's tracks stopped. Elias got down and crouched over them. The last set of prints faced the slot. Feet together, weight balanced, like a man standing still, looking at something, then nothing, no prints leading away. Just the last pair, facing the dark. The slot was about 4 feet wide and low enough that a man would have to duck to enter. The water sound from below was close and strong, something moving in a large space. Harlan crouched beside him. He looked into the slot for a long time. "There's something in there," he said. "Yes." "You feel that air?" Elias felt it, a constant cool breath moving out of the opening, different from the outside air, carrying the smell of deep stone and water and something underneath, old and faint and not unpleasant. "There's light in there," Elias said. Harlan leaned closer, looking. Faint. Far back, not firelight, no flicker to it. Steady and even from somewhere below. The kind of light that had no obvious source from where they were standing. Neither of them spoke for a moment. "You want to go in?" Harlan said. "No," Elias said. He wasn't sure that was entirely true. "He went in there," Harlan said. "He did. And he came back." "He came back," Elias said. "And then he went back in." He stood up. He looked at the valley walls one more time, the marks, the recurring shapes, the layers of time pressed into the stone. Not one person's work. Not a season's work. The accumulation of a long, slow, deliberate presence. "I don't know what's in there," he said. "I don't know what happened to Abe. I don't know if what's in there is something a person should go looking for." Harlan looked at him. "Edmund said some men came back strange." "He did. And some didn't come back at all." "He said that too." They looked at the slot. The steady breath came out of it, the faint light from below. "Abe looked decided," Harlan said finally. "Yes," Elias said. "He did." They rode back a different way. 3 weeks later, Abe Trotter's homestead was found empty and cleared out. Not abandoned in distress. No disarray, just gone, anything of value removed, anything of no value left. The traps taken from the shed, the winter stores taken from the larder, packed carefully, taken deliberately. Someone had packed that place up. Harlan brought the news. His brother wants to go looking. Elias thought about what Edmund had said, about men who went looking. "Tell him to wait," Elias said. "For what?" "For Abe to send word." Harlan looked at him for a long moment. "You know something you're not saying." "I know about as much as makes sense," Elias said. "Which isn't much." After Harlan left, Elias sat on the porch. He thought about the name Abe had said at the window, the first and most certain thing to come back when everything else was still broken loose. Not a warning, not a plea, just a name, said with the weight of someone you'd met. Someone who had looked you in the face and told you their name, and meant it. He thought about the light in the slot. Steady. Not fire, not sun, just light from somewhere below, old and constant. He thought about the folded blanket, left on the chair both mornings without being asked, the habit of a man who had learned to leave things as he found them, or had been shown how. He went inside. He looked at the empty shelf, the faint line still in the dust. In September, a letter arrived from Abe's brother in Fayetteville. Cal Van Trotter had gone to the homestead himself, had made peace with it, mostly, had not hired anyone to go looking, as everyone advised. Still had hope his brother would eventually send word, knowing Abe's character and his love of the hills. And then, at the end of the letter, a postscript. I found something at the house. On the kitchen shelf, a piece of stone. Smooth limestone, flat, about the size of my hand. A mark on it that I can't explain. I don't know where it came from. Abe never was one for keepsakes. I took it with me and put it on my own shelf. I find myself not wanting to put it away. Do you know anything about it? Elias read the postscript twice. Then he read it a third time. He folded the letter. He looked at the stone on his own shelf, the one that had appeared while he was away, placed precisely where the gold had been. The circle and the lines, the same mark. He sat for a long time. He did not write back to Cal Van Trotter. He didn't know what he would say. But that night, for the first time since Abe had walked up his yard in April, since the mule had come home without its halter, since the first word back had been someone's name, said with the weight of a man who had been met and known. For the first time since any of that, Elias slept the whole night through. Quietly, deeply, without waking once to listen to the dark. He never moved the stone, and after a while, he stopped remembering a time when it wasn't there. That was the part that stayed with him in the years that followed. Not the gold, not the tracks, not the light from below the limestone. Just the not remembering. Just the way a thing can settle into a life so quietly that one morning you look at it and realize it has always been there. And you can't say exactly when you stopped questioning that. If this story stayed with you, there are more waiting. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. These are the stories from the edges of the recorded world.